Judge Brown, welcome back to the program. Travis County is still mailing out these voter registration applications to folks there in the county. Not You're obviously not the only county to do this. We've seen other counties also get sued by the Attorney General, Ken Paxton. Are you surprised that Travis County is now in those crosshairs?
Absolutely, because this isn't some weird thing that we're doing. This is what county governments are supposed to do. It's very difficult in Texas to register to vote. We're one of the last states that makes you do it basically on paper with a stamp and through the mail system instead of being able to do it online. And so I think it's really every county's duty to make this process as easy as possible for eligible voters. That's why there's literally a state law saying that we can use state funds to do this, to send out mass mailers to eligible voters. The Secretary of State, Jane Nelson, on her website has lots of information promoting the voter registration process. So yeah, I was absolutely surprised that we were singled out for this. My understanding is that counties across the state do this routinely. So yes, I was surprised.
Travis County is countersuing Paxton and saying that Paxton is now violating, and Texas is violating the National Voter Registration Act. And you're trying to get this into federal court. Why is it so important to be in federal court rather than state court on this issue where Paxton wants to be?
Yeah, so we are frankly tired of Paxton trying to scare voters in Texas, trying to scare eligible voters out of registering to vote, trying to scare county governments out of doing their job, trying to scare election administrators out of doing their jobs, or rather voter registrars out of doing their jobs. So again, we're a bunch of government workers here trying to make it easy for people to participate in their democratic process by saying, okay, here's an easy way to register to vote. And then when people fill out one of those forms to register to vote, it goes to the county tax assessor in our case, and then it goes to the Texas Secretary of State. The Texas Secretary of State compares those to Social Security databases. It is in the state's interest, in the Texas Secretary of State's interest, not to let any of the people registering to vote either through our process or any other process. She's not going to let anybody register to vote who's not eligible. So all we're doing is making it easier to get into that process of eligible voters having access to a form to fill it out, to send to the local voter tax assessor collector, and then up for verification to the state government.
Ken Paxton and the state of Texas argue this is all about using state money to promote voting here. Do you think there's something more to this?
Man, yeah, I do think there's something more to it. I know that Ken Paxton in the past has bragged about making it harder to vote and harder to participate in the democratic process. And I think that's terrible. I think it is A-okay for me to have a policy difference with our governor or with the Texas legislature, because that's what the democratic process is about. It's about people getting elected and electing leaders that we believe in to represent us, and then that process taking place. But what Ken Paxton is trying to do is cut off the access of people from being able to participate in their democratic process, from being able to exercise their right. And that to me is not good government. It's not anything that we want in this country. It's taking us into a bad direction where it's extremely hard and getting harder to register to vote and vote in Texas, harder than it is in other states. So yeah, I'm pretty cynical about what Ken Paxton's motives are here in this. And I wish that we could, at least in Texas, agree. And I think most Republicans and Democrats do agree that we should make it easy and convenient for eligible voters to register to vote and then to vote in Texas. And that's all we're trying to do here.
Judge, here we are less than 40 days away from the election. The voter registration deadline is coming up. Do you expect a court is going to intervene and stop Travis County, or do you think it's going to go the way that Bexar County went and other counties went as well, and let you guys continue sending out these applications only to vote?
I think we are right on the law. There is literally a state statute that says that we can use state funds, Chapter 19 funds, to do exactly what we did. What we did was we sent out a mailer to eligible voters to give them the opportunity to register to vote. And so I think we're right on the law. I think Ken Paxton is wrong on the law. I think that Ken Paxton, and because of the way the law works, the Secretary of State, Jane Nelson, have violated the National Voter Registration Act. And that's what we're suing over in federal court. We're saying that states like cannot do what Ken Paxton is doing, and that the Secretary of State has a duty to make sure that he doesn't do that. And that's what we're suing for. I think we are right on the law. I think that the courts will agree with us that we are right on the law, because we're trying to make sure that our democratic process works the right way, that people who are eligible to vote but aren't registered can get that opportunity to do so here in Texas, and can be verified by not only Bruce Elfont, our local voter registrar, but also be verified by Jane Nelson, our Secretary of State. That's all that we're doing.
And it sounds like, just from talking to you and knowing the system as well, you're suggesting there are already, checks in the system to make sure that no one is sending in a voter registration application who is not eligible to vote.
Yeah, nobody wants somebody to register to vote who is not eligible. I do not want that to happen. Bruce Elfont does not want that to happen. And certainly Jane Nelson, our Secretary of State, does not want that to happen. Luckily, there are checks throughout that entire process. People first have to certify that they are eligible when they fill out this form and mail it in. Then Bruce Elfont enters that information into his database. They're still not a registered voter at that point. It goes up to the state of Texas, to the Secretary of State's office, to compare, to verify that that person is a eligible voter, or a person eligible to register to vote. And then they become a registered voter after they have gone through that process of checks and balances.
Gotcha. Let me shift off for a couple last questions here. Judge, you were part of the Texas Passenger Rail Advisory Committee. You guys met the other day aboard an Amtrak train to San Antonio, from San Antonio to Austin, to discuss expanding passenger rail service. Was any decision or direction decided in that meeting?
I think what we decided in that meeting, which was amazing. I really loved it. There are a lot of people, a lot of local elected officials that did not realize that there is Amtrak service today from San Antonio to Austin. It's only once a day, takes a little longer than I'd like, but it is good service every day. We decided to move forward in a very bipartisan fashion to ask the state legislature to put about $300 million into the railroad fund, so that we can draw down federal funds, hundreds of millions, perhaps billions of dollars from the federal government, to improve the rail infrastructure in Texas, to improve passenger rail service. One thing that I learned on this trip, Andy Byford, the senior vice president of Amtrak for high-speed rail, came down and rode with us. And he mentioned that, on this track between Austin and San Antonio, there are improvements short of building a brand new rail system that we could do. The tracks are in such condition that you can only go about, 35, 40 miles an hour for a part of it near San Antonio. And then we get going up to about 60 miles an hour, which still is better than being stuck in a traffic jam on I-35, but it's not as good as going 100 miles an hour. And my understanding is that the Amtrak engines and cars could go 100 miles an hour if we got those tracks in better shape. So to me, that's great news. And that's something that we are working together with these local county judges, Republican and Democrat, to ask the legislature to put money into this, to draw down federal funds to improve the passenger rail system between San Antonio, Austin, all the way up to Dallas and across Texas.
Judge, let me ask about high-speed rail, because you and I talked about this last time we interviewed here on the program. And I don't want people to roll their eyes when they hear me ask this question, but we've heard this a lot all over the state: Dallas to Houston, Austin to San Antonio, down towards Mexico. Is it any closer to reality today than it was last week, 6 months ago, 5 years ago?
I think the thing that is much closer to reality is having more passenger rail service that maybe isn't high speed, but is higher speed on this leg from San Antonio, Austin to Dallas. I think it's very realistic that we can work out a deal with Union Pacific, that we can get additional trains and track improvements on that, to where people could get from Austin to San Antonio in, I can't quite do the math in my head, but going 100 miles an hour for 70 miles is a lot quicker than you're doing on I-35 today. I think that is very likely to happen in the next few years.
But how far? Yeah, you just answered the question. How far out do you think that is? Because we've been hearing about this forever.
Yeah, absolutely. I think high-speed rail is a different question, because that involves issues of eminent domain. What they're looking at for that route is Dallas to Houston. But still, my understanding is that Andy Byford with Amtrak and even Brightline, the private company from Florida, are trying to work with elected officials here in Texas to figure out a way to make that high-speed leg happen, and then to improve the speed on these other two. And so what I have heard is that that high-speed leg should be up and running within 10 years from Dallas to Houston. That is not as, I don't know, that's a shorter time than has happened so far. But I think it is realistic to say that between Austin or San Antonio, Austin, and Dallas, that leg could be improved in a much shorter time, maybe within 5 years, because there's not, as far as I know, any imminent domain issues with that. The only question is the track condition, and adding additional capacity on those tracks, maybe do some double tracking or triple tracking, so that Union Pacific sees a benefit of being able to move more freight, and that we see a benefit of being able to add more passenger service on there.
Judge, we'll stay in touch with you on that. Thanks for making the time for us as always.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.